As a reminder, for more Microsoft webcasts, you can visit Microsoft.com/webcasts. And again, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Microsoft webcast, Infrastructure Optimization, today's session being part 7 of 11, Improving Business Insight and Performance with Business Intelligence. And now, without any further delay, I'm going to turn the floor over to today's first presenter, Sandy Sharma.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about business insight and performance management. As Tracy said, this is the 7th of 11 webcasts that we're going to do. It's a series we're doing on infrastructure optimization. And before we get started with the webcast, I have a few polls for you just to get an assessment of how much do you already know about business productivity infrastructure optimization. Are you familiar with the concept? Do you know about it? Not familiar with it at all? If you just respond by clicking the right button here, it'll give us an idea of what the baseline is. So thank you for your responses. Go ahead and click one of these to tell us whether you're familiar with infrastructure optimization in general. Just going to give it a few more seconds here. Okay, let's move on to the next poll question. In terms of your own business, how much of this are you trying to implement internally? So are you implementing business solutions within the organization in terms of BI solutions? Are you doing that? Are you in the early stages, middle stages, or advanced stages of implementing a business intelligence solution within your organization? This is just going to help us tweak the speaking and the content appropriately to suit the audience. So would appreciate your feedback here. Thank you for your responses. Going to go to the last poll just to get an assessment of the organization size. Just give it a few seconds here. Okay, thank you for your responses here. So we're going to move on, and first I'll just show you a list of all the webcasts that are part of this series. I do want to call out that there is a very nice book by Peter Weil, which we're giving away for people who view 4 or more webcasts live. And this is for U.S. customers only, unfortunately. So if you're viewing it outside the U.S., we have no ability to ship you that book. But if you're viewing it within the U.S., and your address is in the U.S., we can definitely ship you a copy of that book. So we'd urge you to see the rest of the series here as well, because they're very relevant topics in terms of how to build a great infrastructure within your organization, depending on whatever is relevant to you in terms of a topic, whether it's business productivity, application platform, infrastructure, or core infrastructure. You could select the ones that are relevant for you. We just have, of course, 4 more left. I would urge you to see the first one, because that introduces the overall concept and framework. Just a quick reminder, the webcasts that we are doing in this series are level 100, so they're meant to be introductory, only an overview of the subject. We don't get deep into the technology. We do show you some demos and give you some ideas in terms of what's possible, and it's not meant to be a deep technology dive into how you implement a BI solution, for example, on this webcast. So a quick look at our agenda today. We're going to start with just discussing trends and challenges which IT is facing today. Tie that to business intelligence in particular in terms of what is driving the needs for BI, what exactly is BI, and what is contained in BI solutions, because BI, I think, is a very broad subject, and we're going to dissect that into 3 or 4 areas to actually discuss it in more detail. We'll show you a demo of how you can deliver a BI solution built on the Microsoft platform. And of course, we'll discuss how you get going within your organization. So how should you look at a BI roadmap within your company to implement BI? That's what the optimization conversation is going to be about. So some of you who attended the previous webcast have probably seen these slides before, but this context is very relevant for every conversation. IT does have a lot of pressures on it today. Cost control pressures, regulatory pressures, security pressures, right? And you're always trying to keep the business up and running. And then the business side is asking for more and more things. The business users have gotten, more demanding. There's more pressure from competition. So clearly the businesses have higher expectations of IT, but IT is already, dealing with a lot of infrastructure issues. And specifically when we talk about business intelligence, there's lots of infrastructure aspects that are involved in delivering a business intelligence solution. So it becomes even tougher to deliver those capabilities in a cost-effective and agile manner. And when you think about overall IT complexity and cost, what's happening is the cost of hardware and software is definitely going down over the years. When you look from the 90s to, the 2000s here, the cost is definitely going down, but the cost of IT management and support has gone up dramatically. So that's a pretty interesting, curve here when you look at the opposite direction that these two are going in. Because as we're adding more and more stuff, managing it, dealing with it, provisioning it, deploying it, customizing it, all that is adding a lot of additional cost in IT, whether it's full-time employees or it's outside contractors or vendors you're using, the cost is dramatically high. But from a budget perspective, this is what we see as a typical budget split within an IT organization. 70% of the budget is being spent on maintenance, and only 30% is being spent on new initiatives. So when it comes to supporting the business, obviously you'd like this to be more balanced as a split between your budget. A 50-50 would be a great split, to spend as much on new initiatives as much as you spend on maintenance. So related to that is, how do we get there, right? So we'll discuss it specifically in the context of business intelligence as an infrastructure. However, this entire series is meant to address exactly the problem represented with this pie here. How do you build an infrastructure which does not cost as much to maintain and is agile and can provide as many new initiatives that your business needs, is what this entire series is about. So specifically within BI, I'm going to introduce David Penhaligon. He's a solution architect with us, and he in fact travels the world over and conducts training on Office system, and business intelligence is one of the topics he covers. So we're going to have David participate in this conversation today to discuss what drives the need with BI for BI. Let's start with that. Over to you, David.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Sandy. There are really four things that drive the need for BI. A lot of analysis has been done around these, and what we found is that, first of all, this misalignment of business architecture. And what happens there is that we don't have strategy that aligns to actions, and therefore we don't have the adoption and productivity and retention that a business needs. We also tend to see spread marks. And the problem with spread marks is that you've got multiple unmanaged versions of the truth scattered across the organization.
So these spread marks are spreadsheets, David? Is that what we're talking about?
That's correct, yes.
So that always tends to be the most common tool for BI, right?
And analysis paralysis, what that is, we've heard that term before, but it really is spending all of your time or a lot of your time analyzing information, really not being able to make good sense of that and act on that information. And then we've got IT-dependent scorecards and dashboards. The problem with that, the issue with that, is that IT can build these scorecards, but are they, do they have the business context that the business users really need?
Okay. So we're actually then going to talk about how we look at a BI platform now, right? Is that what we're going to discuss in terms of business intelligence? What is an infrastructure for BI, David?
Yes. Okay, so from an infrastructure perspective, what you've got to have first is you have to have the secure, well-managed infrastructure. And that really is kind of bringing the Core I/O aspect into this. Some of you are familiar with Core I/O, but that really is the foundational aspect. Upon that, we've got common services that Microsoft is investing a lot of money in, a lot of resources, which allows for specific capabilities. Those capabilities include UCC, ECM, and of course BI, business intelligence, and that's what we're focusing on here. Within BI, there are a number of sub-capabilities. So we're going to be discussing performance management, reporting analysis, and data warehousing.
Great. So just to discuss this infrastructure at a very high level, so when we talk about secure and well-managed infrastructure, you're talking about how users get the information that they should be getting, don't get to the information they should not be getting, right? And probably also how you secure it from external threats and things like that. Is that
That's correct. It's really a centrally managed secure environment is what we're talking about.
So essentially we're talking about things like Active Directory, which will be leveraged, to provide, provisioning in terms of roles and groups and access based on that.
That's correct.
Okay. So are we going to get into each of these topics today, David?
We are, yes. We're going to go into each of these three topics.
Okay.
So performance management, first of all, let's describe what performance management is. This has to do with the ability to access information to make informed, relevant, and quick decisions that help guide the business. This does occur both from the top down and the bottom up. So from the CXO, the managers, team leaders, they all need to know what's happening throughout the organization. They need to know the vision, the business processes are being followed, targets and goals are being met. Now from the bottom up, the users need to know how they're doing from an individual perspective, from a group perspective, and of course, again, from this organizational perspective and how they relate. So what we're doing here is we're collaborating with those on your team, those within your company, to determine what factors are causing any performance lags. As a team member, you can then change behavior to improve performance. As a manager, you can better manage and utilize resources. This allows really a better management, so this performance management, which is monitoring, to overcome these challenges and allow you to make better decisions to improve the business.
In fact, I have an interesting example to share here. There's this office supplies company we did some work for, David, and I remember when we implemented a scorecarding system across the organization, they saw within 3 months their productivity in terms of sales performance went up by 13% just because it was exposed, right? Sure. Doing nothing else. Just as you said, if people know how they're doing and they know that it's exposed to the entire organization, there's visibility. That was a pretty dramatic result without doing anything else.
So let's go ahead and go to the next slide here, reporting analysis. So reporting analysis, and I actually like to look at this as analysis and reporting, just because for me it tends to make more sense that you're doing the analysis first, or you're making use of all this information, and then you're getting it to the end users. You're getting it to the business users so that they can determine what that data, what that information is saying. So from an analysis perspective, and I'm going to throw out a product here at you. So we're using SQL. So we're using SQL Server Analysis Services. And we're using some of the tools that come along with that particular product to ensure that we're viewing this one version of the truth. Okay, so we're crunching through this data. We're doing it in the most effective manner possible. And on the analysis side, what we're able to do is we're able to predict why certain things happen. We're able to build scorecards to inform the users and ensure that security is present and enforced. So once we've done that, once we've done this analysis, we can then expose this in a number of ways to these business users. One of those ways is reporting. So we're able to display this data in a way that makes sense and is relevant to the user. This display could be a regular paper report. It could be a scorecard. It could be connecting custom data sources or accessing line of business data sources. So something that is unique here is that we want to be able to give users, the business users, the ability to access this data to run their reports via Report Builder, and really allows them to improve performance by gaining access to that data.
One of the complaints we hear very often, David, is from business users saying that, hey, I am dependent on IT to get my reports. I want to have the ability to slice and dice data as I wish. That's your analysis aspect, as you said, and be able to generate any report based on any parameters that I need, right? Mm-hmm. And in fact, another example I want to share is, we had this large pharmaceutical company in the U.S. on the East Coast, and they had expensive investments in BI. And that kind of goes to the haves and have-not story, and I think we've shared that story often with customers, and I want to share it with this group here as well today, is that expensive BI tools are kind of limited to a few users within the company, and that's what is going on in this pharmaceutical company as well, that in a group, only about 10% of the people at best had those expensive analytical tools and could do the slicing and dicing. The others only had Excel workbooks to work on. So building a solution which lets you do analysis and reporting in a flexible manner without having to depend on IT and making it intuitive and simple for business users is definitely a big challenge and a value proposition if you flip it the other way for customers. And that's kind of what happened with this customer I'm talking about. We brought it in with an Excel-based solution, connected it to SQL Server, and with a little bit of custom code, they had everybody in that organization empowered now to do the kind of reporting they needed without depending every day on IT. IT, of course, still plays a very vital role of managing the data, the security, the integrity of the data, provisioning, deprovisioning the systems. They have to do all of that. And, of course, leading the architecture for the solution. But the business users can then do a lot themselves.
So in that specific case, IT spent a lot of their time producing these reports for the business users.
Correct.
And they weren't really able, IT wasn't really able to empower the business. It wasn't able to be this business driver.
Yep.
Okay, data warehousing. So data warehousing is really about getting all this necessary data from disparate systems, perhaps even unstructured sources, and getting this into a heterogeneous environment so that analysis and reporting can be done. Really, the key component of this is the integration aspect. And it really should be pointed out that this is a very expensive component, a very expensive part of data warehousing. I've seen a number of numbers out there, but it ranges anywhere from 60 to 80% of a data warehousing project expense is caught up just in that integration aspect. So using some of these advanced tools in SQL 2005, for example, this advanced ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, makes it easier for IT to bring data together from these disparate sources, cleanse the data, and then make it available. So data warehousing is really the repository or data collection point that can truly be utilized with an effective BI solution. And once this data is compiled in one location, IT can then begin doing this reporting, doing this analysis, and they have more security over that data.
That makes sense. In fact, we know of so many customers who have thousands and thousands of databases scattered all over the globe, right? And lots of them, in fact, are sitting as little cubes on people's desktops. And if you try to do reporting across everything or control the access to everything and have a holistic view, it's a very challenging project, right? And it's not just the relational databases. People are talking about flat files and mainframe databases and all kind of transactional data sources which have to be brought into a warehouse.
And I should point out, too, with data warehousing, that really is your most stable point in terms of your data, in terms of your information. And so what we tend to see is it's really a good place to build your cubes. It's a good place to do this analysis.
So I think we have this next slide here, which is getting a little bit into what is the Microsoft BI product stack. And before we get into specific products, here's one vision I want to share with you, which Microsoft has often shared with us and with customers and with partners, is that Microsoft's goal is to provide BI for all for the masses. They want to take away this thing of BI is for power users, the haves and have-nots divide. They want to take that away. The example I was giving you of the pharmaceutical company, that's exactly the example they're trying to change. Because the idea is that if everybody at every level of the organization is empowered with the right tools and the right information, you actually have an organization that is aligned in terms of strategy and execution. Because if I, as a contributor, however low or high I might be in the food chain, don't know how my work or my activities or the metrics that are measuring those activities is impacting the company's performance and then relative to the company's strategy, I have no way of being impactful, and the company has no way of aligning all of its people. So that's very important that whatever BI investments are done from the data aggregation level, the reporting level, the scorecarding level, does permeate across the entire organization. So from a stack perspective, it starts with SQL Server 2005, as David was saying, right? And it has three major components in it. The first one is integration services, which focuses on getting the data together. The analysis services lets you build the cubes and do the analysis. And reporting services is also baked in to give you, good reports with Report Builder, which actually a power user can very nicely use. So this becomes your foundation for the data. That's kind of your bottom layer here. And then you have user tools, which is the classic Excel, which continues to be the most favorite tool for everybody who wants to do any kind of reporting, charting, pivot tables. The difference is in Excel 2007, lots of great new features have been added to do better visualization, better, conditional formatting, and of course, Excel services, which we will talk about in a minute here. Because when you talk about using Excel to build a great chart or a diagram or a pivot table analysis, how do you share it with your team? The ability to publish Excel reports through SharePoint using Excel services is what is going to give you that power. So that's where SharePoint 2007 as your portal technology or your collaboration platform ties up with Excel to become a BI rendering layer. SharePoint also is the place where you will put in place scorecards, put in place other analytics tools, and SharePoint itself has some KPI web parts built in. So you can do some light scorecarding just natively with SharePoint. So SharePoint becomes a key player in the collaborative BI vision of Microsoft because BI has to be shared. You cannot separate scorecarding and metrics from collaboration.
So from a business user's perspective, what you're saying is SharePoint really is a foundational technology.
It clearly is, and continues to be for a lot of other things as well. So if it becomes the place where your team comes together to share ideas or share documents, right, and you also have your tasks in there, you definitely want to tie performance to that kind of a site as well. So it makes sense for your collaboration space to have business intelligence baked in. And that vision is what Microsoft clearly sees. Why should you have to go to another tool to do your BI? Because you might set up a team site to collaborate around a new product launch, right? But you have metrics associated with that product launch as well. And you also have documents and tasks associated with that project launch. So if SharePoint becomes your engine to do the task management and the document management around the product launch, the business metrics or the key performance indicators associated with that launch should also be in that same SharePoint site. So that's kind of the vision around using SharePoint as the foundation.
So one location, I've got access to all these.
Everything. And then on top is Business Scorecard Manager and ProClarity Analytics. ProClarity, first of all, I'll talk about really quick here, is an acquisition that Microsoft did to really get deeper into the business application space. Microsoft has had a good foundation with SQL Server and a good 5-10 year run around this in terms of being now a leader in data warehousing and cubing in terms of a most cost-effective and easy-to-use solution. But now when you look at business applications for BI, things like, deeper analytics, doing, drill downs and all of those things which deeper tools provide, ProClarity is giving us that capability now. And Business Scorecard Manager is the scorecarding tool. And I think it's appropriate to mention that these are going to merge into what is being called now Performance Point Server 2007, which will be launched later this year. And I think you just came out of a 3-day Performance Point training session, didn't you, David?
I did, yes.
Do you want to share some insight there in terms of the product roadmap?
Sure. What's going to happen there is we're going to see this convergence of technology. We're going to see a convergence of, as Sandy just shared, ProClarity, which is really a deep analysis tool. You're going to see a convergence of Business Scorecard Manager, which obviously is your scorecarding tool. And you're also going to see this planning, forecasting, and budgeting aspect come into play here. So really it's a convergence of these three technologies to give you an extremely robust tool to manage performance management.
So essentially it's modeling, analytics, deeper analytics, right, and scorecarding, all three kind of being available through the same product, correct?
Correct. Late 2007.
Good. So how does it look? Is it coming along nicely based on what you saw?
Yeah, looks great.
Good. So at a simplest level, all the stuff you saw on top is kind of wrapped under the Office system. So Microsoft Office or Office Business Applications is where Performance Point belongs, right? And there's Excel and SharePoint are all clubbed together as one integrated suite or a platform. And the foundation for data management is SQL Server. So just between those two core buckets, you can easily cover a great BI solution from Microsoft. That's where Microsoft is going with their BI vision. So very important to point out here, when I show this big Office bar on top, I'm not talking just about Excel. SharePoint, Performance Point is part of that bucket here. So in fact, the Office name is going to start meaning a lot more than it ever did to you in the past, because you will see that the Office system is aggregating a lot of the collaboration, the analytics, and the core Office products in it. So just in terms of benefits, to summarize in terms of, okay, if you have a great BI infrastructure and you have the ability to deliver all the capabilities that are relevant from a BI perspective to one platform, what are the benefits? One clearly is you have an enterprise-wide strategy alignment, right? Because we talked about this, that if you have the ability to provide it to the entire company, then you can actually achieve alignment. If it's just kind of limited to a few users, you don't get that alignment. The other thing which users are always complaining about is, I want to do it myself, right? And I want to do it when I need to do it. I don't need to run to people for help. And that capability is definitely enabled in terms of reporting and analytics. Having real-time closed-loop proactive analysis sounds like a long-winded term here, but essentially it's important to be able to tie it a full circle. So if I have a cause and effect analysis, which is possible within the same tool set, and have the ability to do a drill down and get to the causes, right, which are leading to the effect, and tie it all back, I need to be able to do that. And with this suite of products we talked about, you have the ability to do that, and we share a demo with you in a few minutes here to show you an example of how you do that as well.
I'd quickly like to add to that also, Sandy, is that this real-time closed-loop analysis, this is done, it's not something that's just done once. It's something that you want to, it's really a continuous process. And the reason for that, of course, is if you've got this insight, you're able to change behavior and drive the business forward.
Yep, that makes sense. So better decision making and visibility at all levels, right? We cannot emphasize enough on the all levels vision. It is very, very critical that it does not matter whether you are a team contributor at an entry level, or you're a contributor at a managerial level, or a contributor at an executive level, right? All of these levels have to align to be able to have the integrated visibility and interdependent visibility to be able to do it. And doing it through familiar tools, like an Excel environment, for example, is a beautiful thing. Now, IT, of course, wants to definitely reduce the cost associated with maintaining an infrastructure. So instead of investing in multiple applications which are siloed, right? Instead of doing one investment in a deep BI application tool, one in a data warehousing tool, one in an ETL kind of tool, right? If you start adding all of those up, you're dealing with multiple vendors, you're dealing with multiple standards, you're dealing with multiple skill sets, and of course you're dealing with additional acquisition and maintenance cost. So you definitely can reduce costs by investing in one infrastructure which enables things for everybody, and it does it in a familiar environment. So that integration makes it easier for IT to manage, the cost goes down, and the security and control is available through one framework. So you're not building new security models and a new management approach for every tool you add to your suite. You're using the same foundation and the same approach to do it across everybody. Now here's what is interesting. The BI platform for Microsoft can start with very small firms and go all the way up to the large global, Fortune 100 firms. It does not matter what level we are talking about. The BI tools and their capabilities scale very nicely up and down. And from a cost-effective perspective also, it does serve that purpose. So there's going to be higher user satisfaction, so the need for IT to give higher support or user training, because it's a familiar environment, that need goes down dramatically. So great benefits for IT and the business. So let's kind of, we've talked a lot about this, let's kind of do a quick demo to show you what is possible here with a few visuals to give you an idea of what we are talking about with this new platform and how well integrated it is. So let's just take a look at this little application here. We're just going to get in here and go through a few visuals to give you an idea of what's going on. So as an example, Jeff gets an email from his manager saying that we're not meeting the forecast. Please
Sandy, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. Pardon me, sorry. The demo isn't coming through, so I'm going to put us on mute for just a moment so we can troubleshoot, okay?
Did you say it was not coming through?
Yeah.
Okay, folks, we're back. It looked like I was not being able to share that demo from my desktop, so Tracy's confirmed that we can see it now. So what I have here is an email that Jeff has received from his manager saying that the sales are not meeting the forecast and they need to create a revised marketing plan. So what does he do? He goes to what we're going to share with you as a SharePoint portal, right? In the SharePoint environment, there are multiple web parts, as you see here. And one of the web parts is a scorecard, so which is a sales performance scorecard. So before he revises his marketing plan, he has the ability to actually go into a scorecard and see what's going on. As you can see, you have the expand collapse capability. This scorecard is enabled by Business Scorecard Manager, which will soon become Performance Point. And this scorecard gives you the ability to look at any of your key performance indicators, corresponding metrics associated with it in terms of what is the current profit number, what is the target in terms of the, is the target in terms of a visual, is it a yellow, green, or a red, and what is the trend? Is it flat? Is it going up? Is it improving? That's clearly available to you through a visual like this. The other thing you can do is you can click on any of these and see another web part change. As you saw when I clicked on gross profit, you had another web part change in terms of by month, show me what the numbers are. You can also add a lot of other visuals to this view that I can scroll down and add something like a custom Visio tool that actually lets you build a pipeline view. So I could build a view more like a pipeline funnel in terms of when you start with sales stages, every sales stage can be viewed as a pipeline, and the pipeline view is more visual when you see it in a Visio depiction here. So you can attach Visio views as web parts to your SharePoint site here and see a view in that manner as well. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how we can actually do a more deeper drill down, because seeing that my gross profits are not good and my sales are declining at a high level is okay, but I need to do some deeper analytics in terms of what exactly is causing the problem, right?
Now I want to point out you can do some drill down, as Sandy has just showed, within the scorecard, but if you want to do the deep analysis, that's not what the scorecard is for.
That's a good point, David. So what would be used for that is really what the question is, right? And we're going to actually go ahead and look at ProClarity as a tool to help with that. And ProClarity lets you build these views as, it can actually maintain a whole library of the analysis that you have done as predetermined views, or views that you can get to quickly, or you can build the custom view that you need on the fly. So for this company, I'm going to look at all the libraries that I have, and I'm going to look at my different views. So first I want to do a sales detail by channel, because I want to see if there's some channel which is performing better than the other. So when I click on that, it gives me the ability to look at first all sales channels. As you see in my fiscal year 05 and in 06, things were okay. But suddenly in fiscal year 2007, things have dramatically gone down. That's obvious from my view here in the bar chart, and in this little table I have at the bottom, it shows a downward arrow. Now obviously would like to kind of do a deeper analysis on the different channels, because I don't know which channel is actually contributing and which one is not. So I could do first an internet channel and see it looks like the internet channel has really dropped dramatically, right? And then I can also look at the reseller channel and see the results there. And when you see there, the gross profit looks dismal right now, right? In terms of the yellow bar here, it's almost non-existent, and has been that way for a while. So that kind of gives you the analytics ability to kind of go deeper. You also have the ability to take a lot of the ProClarity data offline. There is a ProClarity client with which you can take all of this data offline. It's kind of a book that you can take with you. So the cube also goes offline with the tool, so you could be on a plane doing this analytics while you're on a flight. And of course, it connects back to the main cube when you get back. So I can, again, do a deeper drill down against any of these. Maybe I go deeper into reseller and I look at, other metrics that I'm interested in, and I can do what we call a performance map. So within my product range, for the reseller, which product is the one that's creating the problem? So the performance map tells you that, okay, the bikes are the ones causing the problem. And the nice thing about this visual is that it, with color and with the width and height of it, tells you exactly what the problem is and where the issue is. You can do even a deeper drill down and find out which model of bike is causing the problem, which region it's causing it in. You can do any kind of decomposition as well in this tool to do better analysis. We don't have the time to show you all the great capabilities of ProClarity. Do you want to highlight something else, David, at this point?
Well, I think that's just a good point. And ProClarity it's a very, I want to call it a drop-down friendly tool. So once this has been set up appropriately, you as an analyst can come into ProClarity and do some really deep analytics by just using the drop-down, by looking at the performance map here, by accessing the decomposition tree. So within one screen, there's just a huge amount of information, a huge amount of data. And this was really prior to the acquisition of ProClarity, this was an issue for Microsoft from a BI perspective. So this really filled the gap and gave Microsoft a complete business intelligence solution.
Yeah, that's a very good point, David, because that's what we were saying earlier, that if you don't have good analytics when you've done the scorecarding, it's a kind of an incomplete story, and that closed loop analysis you were talking about is obviously not possible till I know what is causing my problem. So now that I know that in the reseller channel for bikes, right, I have an issue, I can do something about it from my marketing plan perspective to be able to impact it. That's really what the closed loop analysis is for.
Sure, and you can collaborate on this, you can share this information with team members, and you can, in this case, develop a marketing plan to improve performance.
Correct. So let's talk about the marketing plan. Let's go to the plan that we have in here, and I'm going to do an edit in Microsoft Excel. So again, as I said, if you have a document that's going to solve the problem, it sits in the same site, right, and you have the ability to get to it and then be able to share it. So I open up Excel, and for those of you who haven't seen it, this is Excel 2007. If you see, the UI is a little different. There's conditional formatting and those kind of capabilities in here which make it very rich. Like, for example, here, if I just had numbers of 90,000, 157,000, those are not so intuitive when you look at them. But being able to do conditional formatting like this and simply show a bar that tells you which is the bigger number makes it easy to make more sense out of numbers. So Excel also continues to improve in terms of what it can do just from visualization and formatting and things like that. But the thing I want to highlight here is the Excel services, right? Did you want to add something here?
Well, I actually wanted to add to it in terms of Excel. A big improvement with 07 has been the ease of use of pivot tables.
Good point.
Pivot tables before were kind of in the realm of the power users, and now what we're seeing with 07 is that me, the lowly business user, can actually utilize a pivot table, which allows you to do some fairly deep analysis within Excel.
That's a good point, yeah, very good point. Pivot tables are simpler to use, and the other nice thing, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is Excel services. So let's say we change this number for improving Salesforce effectiveness, and we're going to update our chart here. And then what I'm going to do is I have the ability to publish this new plan to the rest of my team. How am I going to do it? Am I just going to ask them to go to the Excel sheet, open it up, and look at it? No. I can actually publish it through a browser. So I can actually simply do, a new, and I can just do, when I do a save as, and I can save it not only to as my local drive, but if you look at this option here, I can do it in Excel services. And when I do it in Excel services, then I have the ability of actually, choosing what I want to add here in terms of my Excel services output. Do I want the chart? Do I want the marketing data? Whatever I want to include, I can add in here. So I'm going to do my chart, and I can do OK. And then I can also do all the name ranges in here, and I go ahead and publish that, and this gets published in a browser. So that zero footprint distribution capability from Excel through Excel services is a brand new addition with the launch of Office 2007, and it's an excellent tool in terms of being able to share your BI, reports or analysis very easily with team members. And that makes it very, very powerful for business users, because I think if you folks are from IT and you saw this, you were like, thank God this exists. I don't have to worry about, doing an HTML publishing on every report that the team wants to share. And then the business users are very happy because they don't have to burden IT with those kind of requests. So this is a nice intuitive add-in which I wanted to talk about. And then, of course, we can go to another view, right, because I also published some data with it. So you see I had a drop-down right here. I can go back and do just my chart, or I can look at the table. So I can do that right here with the drop-down, which makes it very easy in a browser for you to be able to share all that data. I could make this a web part and expose it through SharePoint as well, but I can also view it in Internet Explorer. So that's the nice thing about simply being able to view it in a browser. So that's kind of the whole approach in terms of being able to do all the analysis, figure out what the issue is, change the marketing plan, and now Jeff can get back to his boss and say, okay, we are making some progress there. We have a certain revised marketing plan, and this is our direction in terms of where we're going to go ahead and make the changes. So the idea, as I mentioned, is to have one collaborative environment which is used to expose not only the KPIs and the metrics, but also all the documents, all the scorecards, all the metrics, all the collaboration in terms of communication and tasks. All of that is in one place. And the same platform which you invest in once for collaboration also gives you BI capabilities. You buy Performance Point, you can get deeper analytics, you can get scorecarding. And as I mentioned earlier, this scorecard is enabled by Business Scorecard Manager, which will become Performance Point soon. But SharePoint natively itself gives you some very, in fact, decent KPI scorecarding capabilities, and so does Excel. So you can build some simple scorecards with Excel, simple scorecard with SharePoint, but if you want to go with a robust scorecarding which has annotations and explanations and metrics that are tying into a robust cube for the enterprise, then you need to go invest in Performance Point. So it's a very rich tool set offering, and of course underneath, behind the covers, is all SQL Server for the cubes and reporting services which can also be rendered through SharePoint. So it makes it a pretty holistic environment to deliver an end-to-end BI solution, and as I said earlier, at a very cost-effective model. So let's get back to our slides there. I want to share a few more slides in terms of how do you get going in your environment when you actually want to deliver this kind of a solution. We saw some of the features and capabilities. Of course, we can spend all day showing you more demos, but unfortunately we have only an hour. So let's talk about how do you get there. And for that purpose, there is an optimization model that we're going to talk about. So the first thing I want to discuss is, give me a second here. Okay. So for your organization, when you talk about a journey of arriving at a dynamic IT organization, business productivity infrastructure is one optimization model. On the left side, we consider a phase which we call basic, and on the extreme right, we have a phase called dynamic. For every organization, it is possible to identify where you are today, and based on your business goals, it is possible to identify where you want to go. As you move from left to right, there is obviously things that happen in terms of cost, things that happen in terms of business value. These optimization models are built on independent industry thinking. They are built with a lot of research. They're built with interviews with customers, and it's based on academic input, analyst input, partner input, and customer input. These optimization models were invested in by Microsoft to provide their customers an agnostic approach on planning their infrastructure and getting there. So that's what these are. These are a set of resources and approaches to help you achieve what I'm going to share with you on the next slide. Any benefit you get out of an infrastructure is not just about technology, first of all. Your technology has to be invested in, but the benefit realization of the technology only happens when your people are trained and matured enough to get the most out of the technology. Similarly, your company's processes have to be robust enough and evolved enough to get the most out of technology as well. So let's take scorecarding as an example. I might have a great business scorecard manager tool which the company buys, and we invest in it, and we decide to put in a bunch of KPIs and metrics in it and start publishing scorecards. Unless the company embraces the religion of being run by metrics which are aligned with the company's strategy, right? And the people believe in it, are trained in it, and their behavior and culture is induced in there, along with a formal process of defining metrics, reviewing them, monitoring them, and visualizing them, there is no way you're going to get benefit out of that investment. So it is very important in optimization to recognize that all three things have to kind of go in tandem. And as you see in this visual, as you move from basic to standardized to rationalize and you evolve more, your cost is going to go down and business value return is going to keep going higher. And of course, when you get to the dynamic phase, which is more like an aspirational phase, you will have some additional cost, but you'll get dramatic return in business value as well.
I have some comments here, Sandy. As you're moving across the model, it's important to point out that you don't take huge, massive jumps. You're not going to move from a basic state to a rationalized state over the course of a month. That's not going to happen. What you tend to see is these really well-planned, thought-out steps. So you're going to move from a basic state to a more standardized, rationalized dynamic. And of course, there are a lot of benefits for doing this, as Sandy has pointed out. So there's a tremendous amount of value for moving across the model, and you also see a huge reduction in cost. So in the rationalized state, you'll see we're bottomed out in IT costs. Now I'll just head off this question because I tend to get it. Why is there a slight uptick in dynamic? One of the reasons there is a slight uptick in dynamic is that you're constantly adopting new technologies. You're on the cutting edge. You potentially have people that are higher trained and that are slightly more expensive. However, the business value is tremendous in dynamic.
That's a good point, David. And just as David said, there is a lot of benefit, and it's very structured in terms of how you get there. There is obviously some organizations which are more agile in terms of changing people and processes, and they will achieve this transition faster. There are others who will do it slower. However, it's definitely not a month to get from one to the other. It's a long-term journey, and that's really what is important to keep in mind when you think about this. Now, across all of these three capabilities, sub-capabilities, which we discussed in our webcast today, performance management, reporting and analysis, and data warehousing, for all of these three, we have a deeper definition for what it means to be basic, what it means to be standardized, what does it mean to be rationalized. So what are the symptoms and what is the profile when you are in one of these is very clearly defined. What are the challenges in that phase, and what are the benefits of moving to the next phase is also very clearly defined in this model. We're just going to share a few of those examples with you to get you an idea of what we're talking about. We clearly don't have the time to discuss the entire model. The purpose of sharing that is that when you plan your BI infrastructure optimization, consider leveraging this model because it's based on, as I said, a lot of industry thinking and best practices, and it will help you plan it. It does not assume that you have a Microsoft-only environment. That's very important because those capabilities today might be delivered through another environment or another product or another technology. So it is useful for every customer to go through this exercise, and Microsoft and its partners worldwide are being trained on how to help customers with this planning and this long-term approach. So just as an example, when we talk about performance management and we consider a transition from standardized to rationalized, this is kind of in the middle for performance management. In standardized, you typically have departmental level scorecards, right? So let's say the sales department has implemented scorecards, and they have key performance indicators that are sourced from a database. So they built a database for the sales department to update their information in terms of their sales performance by person, by product, by year. You have all of those capabilities in a database, and a scorecard is available for you to see that. Now, when you move from that kind of a capability to a rationalized capability, what is rationalized? You're talking about strategy-driven enterprise-wide scorecards. What's the difference? Firstly, it's not just limited to a department. Secondly, it's tied to the company's strategy. So as an example, let us say that the company has a strategy of growing market share, and the growing market share is going to happen in Asia. Now, having all the scorecards all over the place tied to the strategy measure of am I growing my market share in Asia, and is that impacting new growth, and that's aligned with the company's overall strategy and visible to everybody, and it goes enterprise-wide. That's when you have an enterprise-wide implementation. And then you have automated tools for budgeting, planning, and forecasting. We talked about the fact that Performance Point is going to give you the ability to do more automation specifically around things like budgeting, planning, and forecasting. Having those capabilities across the enterprise, again, would be considered a rationalized phase. And what benefit do I gain out of something like that? Clearly, you have strategic alignment of your initiatives and individuals' contribution, and you have financial consolidation across the company. So you can easily do a drill down or analysis across the entire company through one common tool set. And that is a big thing to achieve.
And Sandy, I want to say one thing here. With the strategic alignment, where that comes into play is through visibility. And so as you move across the model, as you move from standardized to rationalized, you tend to move into these more enterprise-wide scorecards. That is visibility. When you have that visibility, you can drive this business performance. You have the strategic alignment.
That's a very good point, David. So let's talk about reporting and analysis similarly, right? If you look at it in the standardized phase, we still have some IT-driven parameterized reporting, right? So you might have defined data sources, and IT is still helping with a lot of those. You might be using Crystal Reports or whatever tool you're using. You're doing a lot of that to support your business users. And your analytical tools are connecting to subject-oriented data, right? So it's like there might be some for sales, there might be some for finance, it might be based on some departmental initiatives around some subjects. Whereas when you go to the rationalized phase, you're talking about user-driven reporting, right? Users are defining it, they're scheduling it, they're subscribing to it, and users determine which reports they want, how they want to slice it and dice it, when they want to get it, and it's all driven by users. But of course, it is controlled in a proper manner with the right security and access by IT. And IT is the one that gives the infrastructure to do that. And then you have, from a perspective of a wizard-based data publishing from front-end analytical applications and web-based interactive analysis. Now here you see that if you have things like Excel services, right, that can give you the ability to do the analysis in a tool, publish it through a web-based interface, and have deeper analytical capabilities like we showed in ProClarity. That would give you the ability to be a rationalized organization. And as I said, it's not just about technology or people and processes that are also mature and aligned to support that kind of benefit. So having users do a lot of this and not having to go to IT, clearly there's a cost benefit, right? And there's a user empowerment benefit, which is very, very difficult to measure, but clearly very strategic. Because if company people across the organization can have a good information set available to them at the right time, right, to make good, better informed decisions, your company definitely will progress. So that's definitely a clear value add in terms of having it available to users. Do you want to add anything, David?
Well, it's not called out here, but again, as you move from standardized to rationalized from a reporting perspective, what you're going to see is really this more information, more data that's available from an enterprise perspective. And so what that allows you to do is it allows you to get away from this siloed approach, this siloed way in which you're looking at your business. It allows you to extend this information across the organization.
And then as a foundation, from a data warehousing perspective, you have basic ETL capabilities and packages to load subject and functional data marts, right? It's not really at an enterprise level. So when you get to being centralized and managed data warehouse, right, and you have automated extract, transform, and load where you're not having lots of users do this or run batches and things like that, you have the ability to design it, maintain it, and implement it through a simple interface, which could be driven by IT or, in part supported by some business users. You have the ability to have a centralized infrastructure for data marts, and that's when you get to a rationalized phase. And clearly the benefits is you have centralized data management and centralized data warehousing, but what does that give you? Clearly gives you a lot of cost benefit and clearly gives you a lot of ease and lower headaches in terms of maintenance, which of course IT loves. And of course the business users love you because you have given them everything through one data source.
And I do have another quick comment here. If you remember, I spoke about the integration aspect. The integration aspect of a BI project tends to be really the most expensive component. So whatever we can do here from a data warehousing perspective, by making it more efficient for IT to build this data warehouse, adds a huge amount of value to the business. And so this is where those automated ETL, so those extract, transform, load come into play. So whatever we can do to make it easier for IT here really allows IT to add that value to the business, to be a business driver.
So just in summary here, as you said, optimizing your business intelligence infrastructure is clearly going to help your business perform better because of strategic alignment, everybody knows what they're doing, right? And their metrics are exposed. As David said, the visibility is the key piece in performance management, and as I shared an example, the more visibility you have, the higher performance you're going to have just because everybody knows it's visible. The second thing is better business insights. So you can do the cause and effect and the closed loop analysis to be able to make the right decisions. The demo we showed you, we had to know that the resellers for bikes is where the problem is with margin, so you can do a more effective mitigation plan to improve that. And of course, business decisions are done much faster because you're not waiting to do the analysis paralysis as we started our conversation here. It gets done quickly, it's snappy, and you make quicker decisions which are better informed and therefore obviously are better business decisions. And of course, from an access to data perspective, if you have consolidation in a warehouse, you're not going to hundreds of different sources to get what you're looking for. You have it all in one place. And IT, of course, will have dramatic cost reduction and reduced management headaches if you have it all organized as the right infrastructure. But of course, there is a journey of getting there, and that's the optimization approach which we shared with you in terms of how to get there. So there are lots of additional resources you might be interested in. There are, of course, deeper dive webcasts and training curriculums that are always available to get to know more about these. This one was meant to introduce you to the entire BI infrastructure and also help you in terms of how you can get there. You can always do a file print to PDF of this webcast to get these resources and other information contained in this deck. This webcast will be available on demand. Within 24 hours, you will receive an email with a link to this webcast, which you can share with other folks or go back and view on demand. Just have a few polls to see, what you think about in terms of familiarity. Do you understand what infrastructure optimization is a little more compared to what you knew before you started the webcast? Do you think you're more familiar with it? Are you getting very familiar with it? Would love to know that in terms of polls. So your feedback is definitely appreciated here, as this webcast helps you kind of understand it a little better. So thank you for your feedback here. I'm going to stay a few more seconds here on this. And clearly, this is very high-level familiarity that we are talking about. You will obviously have to drill deeper into understanding this model more. I'm going to move on to the next poll. Do you think this webcast has favored you, has influenced you favorably in terms of how you look at BI within your organization? This is in terms of infrastructure investments, optimization, how you get there, and also in terms of how you implement it. That's really what the purpose of this question is. Thank you for your responses here. Just to remind you again that this is part 7 of an 11-part series, and we urge you to look at the other available webcasts. And for those of you who view 4 or more webcasts live and are within the U.S. in terms of a mailing address, we will be sending you a copy of Peter Wiles' book on enterprise architecture as a strategy. This is an excellent book which is based on years of research, which tells you how infrastructure optimization brings real results. There's lots of research like Peter Wiles and lots of other case studies that we have here with Microsoft customers, which give you real tangible measures in terms of how companies have benefited from infrastructure optimization. So I'm going to hand it over to Tracy. She has a couple of housekeeping items, and I do believe she has a giveaway. So over to you, Tracy.
Excellent. Thanks, Sandy. Also, remember, for more information, everyone can print a PDF of today's session, and in order to do that, just go to the File menu in your upper navigation bar. Now, we will be getting to the questions and answers here shortly, so please feel free to submit your questions now into the questions and answers pane found at the bottom of your live meeting screen. Also, I will be posting a survey here in just a minute. If you would all please take a moment to fill it out before you log off. We really do appreciate your feedback. And as a reminder for our upcoming and previously recorded webcasts, you can visit Microsoft.com/webcast. You can access this webcast, which will be available for download in about 24 hours. And if you have any webcast content ideas, if there's something out there that you would like to see and haven't yet, we'd love to hear from you. Just take note of this link here. And for anybody who's interested in receiving a free 14-day trial of Microsoft Office Live Meeting, you'll want to visit Microsoft.com/presentlive. And now for filling out that survey today, you're going to be automatically entered in to win this 30-gigabyte Zune digital media player. So it definitely gives you a little incentive to fill that out for us today. And here is a survey. Please follow the links provided to complete today's webcast evaluation. And Sandy, do we have any questions waiting there for you?
Did have a few, which I think we've already answered. If we have more questions, we can always answer with text.
That sounds great. Well, with that, I do want to extend a very special thank you to both Sandy and David for your presentation today. I also want to extend a very special thank you to everybody for joining today's Microsoft webcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this will conclude today's session. The audience may now disconnect from the audio portion of today's presentation.